Hello everybody, I'm Joe and this is the GM Toolbox, your go-to place to get all your Project Black Flag updates. Today is Monday, February 13th, and we have Project Black Flag's first playtest packet, so let's get into it. Today is an exciting day because this afternoon I was browsing online and sure enough, there was our first playtest packet for Project Black Flag on a Monday. So we get all week to play with this thing and I'm really excited. So why don't we take a quick look? Okay, so here's our playtest packet, and what they've done here is given us kind of the introduction. This looks like it's kind of the introduction to the core rulebook, the first chapter, if you will, kind of covering like what is the game itself, what is role playing, what is a fantasy role playing game, how do dice work, things like that. As far as how to use this packet, they do tell us that again, this is a 5th edition adjacent system. In fact, they even mention here that a 5e fighter and they're calling it right now just core fantasy system in brackets. So the to be determined name of the system, fighter could still play together at the same table. So you could have a 5e class and we'll call it Black Flag class playing at the same table together and it would work. They do mention that the characters built in Black Flag are probably going to be a little more powerful than your base classes from 5e, and they suggest you either give them a feat at first level or one of the talents described later in this packet, which we'll get into. So there's a little bit of power creep here, but there's been some power creep in 5e anyways, which was kind of part of the reason 1D&D was going to be a thing, was to make some of those base classes, those original subclasses, kind of come up to the same power level as stuff that was introduced in later books. So perhaps if you use, let's say, like a Tasha Cauldron subclass, it might be a little bit closer to the power of something we would see in here. But, that's part of the reason we're playtesting is so we can mess with that and see. They do talk about here as well, in terms of mechanical power, any 5th edition race and sub-race combination can be substituted for any of the core fantasy system lineages and heritage combinations. They do mention now, you're going to see it here, we do not have classes yet. All we're dealing with in here is their heritage and lineage system, which kind of replaces race and sub-races, and their backgrounds, which are very similar to 5e backgrounds with some cool differences. So you're going to have to kind of interchange 5e stuff, but it's meant to be that way. It's meant to work with 5e. So playtesting it this way is kind of neat because we get to see how that balances out. So again, they go through here. What is the rule system? What is a role-playing game? What's a game master and a player character? All that stuff. Dice. All the things you kind of know. They tell you like what's fantasy in a nutshell, like a fantasy RPG system in a nutshell. So all that stuff is kind of stuff you'll recognize. Now they do mention here, it's worth noting, right here, other tools you'll need. In addition to this book and polyhedral dice, each PC will need a printed or digital character sheet. The GM will need again, we're seeing core fantasy role playing, but we're going to say Black Flag. The GM will need the Black Flag Monster Vault, which is going to be their monster manual. They talked about that in the last, one of the previous Black Flag Friday updates. The core Black Flag Game Master's Guide is also helpful. So it does sound like it's going to be a 3-book core set with the core rulebook, which is what we're kind of seeing chapter 1 of here, a monster book and a GM book. So we will have the trinity of RPG rulebooks. So that's kind of cool to note there too. That kind of confirms that one question for us. So if we get into the chapter 1 character creation here, we do see they give us some concepts and they talk about you want to generally choose a class first. That's kind of like what your job is, your profession is, things like that. They talk about leveling using XP, though later on they say you can use XP or milestone. XP has just always kind of been the traditional default. But in a recent survey they did asking people what system they use, milestone was highly in the lead. So milestone is definitely probably the more popular leveling system now. And you can totally use that. I had also suggested the PIP system, which I did a video on, which is a really cool compromise system between Milestone and XP that you should check out. We talk about, what are hit points and hit dice. All this stuff is you'll recognize it from 5e. Proficiency bonuses, they don't give us, I don't think I saw the proficiency bonus table, but let's just assume it's the same as the 5e one. We talk about our ability scores. You know how those work. Our ability modifiers are the same. We have point buy, we have standard array, all those things, same as 5e. So we can move on from there. Now we talk about choosing a lineage and a heritage, choosing a background, and then filling in the blanks. So we're going to get more into lineage and heritage, but essentially lineage is more of your race, right? That's more of your or species or whatever you want to call it, right? It's am I an elf? Am I a dwarf? Am I a human? Am I a halfling? Things like that are going to be genetic abilities, things that everybody of that species or race would have. Things like dark vision, things like height, things like movement speed or age. Those are going to be your lineage. Your heritage this is a great concept, right? Because this is something that I think WotC was trying to capture. Maybe didn't do the best job of how they were doing it. They just said, oh, just put your ability scores anywhere. What these guys are saying is that your heritage more determines the society you grew up in. If you're an elf that grew up among dwarves, you're going to have certain heritage abilities, things like knowledge of metalwork or stonework or things like that you would have learned growing up in that society. So you're going to choose a lineage and a heritage. Now, if you're an elf growing up in elven society, you can choose an elven heritage as well and kind of go more traditional. But if you were maybe, like I said, an elf who grew up in dwarven society, you would choose an elven lineage with a dwarven heritage. And that will give you a really cool mix of abilities. And when you start looking at it, it's a lot of fun because you can really start to kind of design some cool characters with just this alone. And then we have backgrounds, which are very similar to our backgrounds in 5e with one really cool difference that we'll get into a little later. Filling in the blanks are things like what does my character look like, their height, all that stuff, fleshing out your backstory and, the fun stuff that really kind of makes your character more fun to play or to role play, right? So they give you a cool little checklist here, though, which is neat. Again, we talk about gaining levels here using XP or milestone. You guys know this stuff. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but, the basic stuff. Here's your leveling requirements for each level if you choose XP. Here's how milestone works. That kind of thing. Let's get into lineage and heritage. So when we're looking at elements of lineage, like I said, those are things like age, size, speed. Elements of heritage are going to be things like alignment, which again, they give you a suggested alignment. You can do whatever you want. But languages, that's a cool one. Now, everybody is going to know common, and generally you're going to have one language of your choice from your heritage. They do give you a suggestion one. So if you have a Dwarven heritage, you're probably going to choose Dwarven, but you don't have to. But that's generally what it's going to be. So now let's look at, since we're talking dwarves, let's look at the Dwarven lineage traits. So you'll recognize these from 5e. It's just the way they broke them up. We have our Dwarven age, right? They're let's see here. Dwarves mature at the same rate as humans, but most consider themselves young until they reach age 50. So, and they live about 350 years. Size, 4 to 5 feet tall, 150 pounds. Medium, speed, 25 feet. Night vision is 60 feet. All that good stuff. Dwarven resilience, you have advantage on saving throws against becoming poisoned, and you're resistant to poison damage. And Dwarven toughness, you get an extra hit point per level. Okay, so that's, if you're a dwarf, you get those things. Now, heritage options. Anybody can choose these based on, it doesn't matter what race or species you are. You choose this based on where your character grew up. So again, this could be an elf could choose this Fireforge heritage or this Stone heritage. So for this Fireforge heritage, generally they lean towards chaotic or neutral, but you notice they say generally they lean towards. This is not, or typically they lean towards. Not required, just, in general, that's what it's like. Expert Artisan. You gain proficiency with glassblower's tools or smith's tools. You choose one of these tools, your proficiency bonus is doubled for an ability check you make with these tools. So you get expertise in whichever tool. If you read this too, it talks about how these dwarves generally live in the heart of the mountains and use volcanoes and the lava, and stuff like that to as their forges and stuff like that. So that's why you're kind of getting this. You have resistance to fire damage. So that comes from just being in that heat all the time. Living inside a volcano, you get used to the heat. So you have resistance to fire damage. Friends to elements, you can speak, read, and write Ingnan, in addition to you choosing to your chosen languages. So that's an extra language you get on top of your other languages. Reforged, your people have a deep connection to elemental fire and have collectively learned to repair forged items. Notice this, forged items with a touch. You know the mending cantrip, and you can cast it as an action. However, you can only use this trait to repair objects made only of metals, such as reconnecting two halves of a broken sword. Languages, you know Common and one additional language of your choice. Typically, the Heritage chooses Dwarvish. So there you go. That's how a Heritage works. We have the Stone Heritage, which is a little bit different, right? You have your alignment more towards lawful or good. Dwarven weapon training, just like in Player's Handbook, though this one says you're proficient with battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, and warhammer. Dwarven armor training, you're proficient with light and medium armor. Additionally, your speed is not reduced by wearing heavy armor, regardless of your strength score. Tool proficiency, you are proficient with artisan tools of your choice, smith's tools, brewer's tools, or mason's tools. You have an eye for quality. Whenever you make an ability check related to the origin of metalwork or masonry, you can add your proficiency bonus to the roll. If you have proficiency in a relevant skill or tool, you add double your proficiency bonus to the roll. Meaning that if you're, so let's see here, if you're making an ability check related to the origin, so if let's say you're proficient in history and you want to make a check about who made this building, and you are proficient with masonry as well, you would double your proficiency bonus since you have proficiency in both history and masonry. And then your languages, again, Common and generally Dwarvish. Okay, so now let's take a look at one of the Elven ones. So we have the Elf here. We can see age, size, your speed is 30, your night vision to 60, all that fun stuff. You notice they call it night vision instead of dark vision as well. You have superior vision in naturally dark and dim conditions. You can see in dim light within 60 feet of you as if it were bright light, and darkness as if it were dim light. You can't discern colors in darkness, only shades of gray. So it's dark vision. They're just calling it night vision. So that's kind of, interesting. Then if we look here, we have keen sense. So you have proficiency in perception skill. Magic ancestry, you have advantage on against being charmed and can't put to sleep, and then you have the trance, meaning sleeping for 4 hours. So all stuff you recognize from your 5e elf. Now our cloud heritage here. So let's see, characters who choose this heritage were raised with the values and traditions of the cloud elf communities. Many accounts concerning the origin of elves have been spun and almost are deeply intertwined with tales of magic. So it kind of sounds high elf-ish here. Let's take a look. Alignment's generally lawful or neutral. Touch of magic. Choose a school of magic for which you have cultivated an affinity. You learn a cantrip of your choice from that school of magic. When you reach 3rd level, choose a 1st level spell from that same school of magic. And when you reach 5th level, choose a 3rd level spell from that same school of magic. You learn these spells and cast them at their lowest level. Once you cast one of these spells, you must finish a long rest before you can cast that spell again using this feature. Your spellcasting ability for this is either Charisma, Intelligence, or Wisdom. Choose it during the character creation. World of Wonders, you have proficiency in the Arcana skill. And then languages, you know Common and 2 additional languages of your choice. Typically creatures of this heritage, choose Elvish and Draconic. So again, they're giving you the typicals if you want to stay a little more traditional, but you don't have to. So kind of cool. I like that they let you choose your casting modifier. It's not, whatever elves are good at. It's, it's whatever your character is good at. So kind of cool. We have a second heritage here for them as well. And then we have 2 human ones. We have a nomadic and a cosmopolitan heritage for humans. So really cool. We won't go over all of that in too much detail. You can download the packet. The link's in the description. But let's go over backgrounds because I think this is neat. The way backgrounds work is you're going to get 2 skill proficiencies. You're going to get additional proficiencies. So usually a tool, 1 or more tools, and or a language. Combination of tool and language, 2 tools, 2 languages kind of deal. And then you get your starting equipment. Optionally, you can always take the gold and buy a starting equipment. And then instead of getting a ability of some sort from your background, those background abilities have always been very kind of minor and not great. Like, yeah, occasionally they come in, but it's like, oh, I have a contact in a city who can give me information. It's just kind of meh, kind of wishy-washy. What I like about this is you get a talent, and they have a list of talents. No, I don't believe these are feats, so they are feat-like. And I don't know, like I say, I don't know if these are feats yet, because I'm not sure if we're going to see feats, or if we're going to see more talents, and talents have taken the place of feats. I'm not 100% sure yet, but let's take a look at the talents. So you're going to get a talent. So let's look at the Scholar, for instance. With the Scholar here, we can see we get 2 skills of our choice from the following: Arcana, History, Nature, Religion. And just like in 5th edition, if you have a choice between skills and you already have the skill from your class, you can choose a different one, of your choice for your background. Additional proficiencies, you learn 2 additional languages of your choice, or gain proficiency with one type of tool or vehicle relevant to your field of study. So there you go. You can do 2 languages or a tool or vehicle. Equipment, a bottle of ink, a quill, knife. So there's your starting equipment, right? And then you get a talent. So it says here, as a scholar, you have spent time researching particular academic subjects at an institute or learning or under the tutelage of a knowledgeable teacher. Choose a talent from the following list to represent this experience: polyglot, school specialization, or trade skill. So, and then you get a adventuring motivation. What motivated you to go adventuring? This is a suggestion, not something you have to take. But if we go down here, and you can see the other ones. So, is said here, polyglot, school specialization, or trade skill. So talents are broken up by magic talents, technical talents, or martial talents. So you'll see here under the magical talents, we have school specialization. Prerequisite is the ability to cast spells. Choose one of the 8 schools of magic. You gain the following benefits. Whenever you cast a spell from that school that requires you to make an attack roll, add 1 to that roll. That's pretty cool. Like, that's an awesome ability. Whenever you cast a spell from that school that requires a target to make a spell save DC, the DC increases by 1. Again, that's awesome. Like, I mean, if you're a wizard, yeah, you want this. If you use a spell book to cast your spells, the golden time you must spend copying the spells into your spell book is halved. So super cool. Polyglot. So you have studied languages extensively, allowing you to effortlessly communicate in multiple languages and puzzle out critical information from languages you don't know. When you select this talent, you gain the following benefits. You learn three languages of your choice, none of which are common. You have advantage on charisma ability check made to interact with non-hostile creatures from whom any of these 3 languages is their primary language. Whenever you make an ability check related to understanding the meaning or verbal or written language you don't know, you can add your proficiency bonus to the roll. If you have proficiency in a relevant skill or tool, you add double your proficiency bonus to the roll. I like it. I mean, that's super cool. And then here's the trade skill one. You gain proficiency with one skill type or tool vehicle. You can read it from here. So you can see how these are how these work. And the martial ones, we didn't really get to look at a martial one, but you have like armored training, armored combat, and combat conditioning. Some cool stuff. And these are just samples for a playtest. So obviously there's gonna be a lot more to choose from, but these are pretty cool. This really gives background some weight. I mean, that's a lot of fun. I think this will be a lot of fun to play with. Will it be too powerful? I don't think so. If you're balanced, if you combine it with the fact that you can instead take a feat for like a 5th edition character or something like that, I think this will make your level 1 characters just feel a lot more fun and really reflect that, when you had a background, all those years you spent as a soldier, for instance, you got more than, a rank and insignia, like you really gained some skills out of that, more than just 2 skill proficiencies, but you really gained something that matters and gives weight to your character for the rest of the game. So that all looked pretty cool. I'm really excited about what we saw out of that today. I will be doing playtests of these on my live streams on Tuesday and Friday night this week. So please come and join me for those, and let's build some characters together. I'd love to get your input on these. Don't forget the link to the packet is down below in the description. Let me know what you guys think of the first playtest packet of Project Black Flag. Do you like it so far? Do you plan to do some playtests with it and build some characters and compare them to a 5e character, and let me know what you think. I'm really curious to everybody's feedback on this. And make sure you fill out the playtest survey if you do playtest, and let Kobold Press know what you think. All right, that's it for today, guys. And until next time, roll those dice.